110 Most Famous Inspirational Architecture Quotes. The best inspirational architecture quotes will tell you about the great skills and creative mindset of architects. The definition of architecture is the art or practice of designing and building structures, and especially habitable ones. A person gives a form to his creative imagination through architecture. In the below inspirational architecture quotes, you will get to know that architecture is a visual art, and without it, our own civilization does not exist. According to most famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright, the mother art is architecture. Without an architecture of our own, we have no soul of our own civilization. You can also read our other inspirational quotes about arrogance, inspiring art quotes, attraction quotes, and team spirit quotes. Let's read the collection of best inspirational architecture quotes to know about the creative mindset. 1. A building has integrity just like a man. And just as seldom. Ayn Rand. 2. A doctor can bury his mistakes, but an architect can only advise his clients to plant vines. Frank Lloyd Wright. 3. A great building must begin with the immeasurable, must go through measurable means when it is being designed, and in the end must be unmeasured. Louis Kahn. 4. A greater awareness in architects and planners of their real value to society could, at the present, result in that rare occurrence, namely, the improvement of the quality of life as a result of architectural endeavor. Cedric Price. 5. A house can have integrity, just like a person, said Rourke, and just as seldom. Ayn Rand. 6. A man doesn't borrow pieces of his body. A building doesn't borrow hunks of its soul. Its maker gives it the soul and every wall, window, and stairway to express it. Ayn Rand. 7. A real building is one on which the eye can light and stay lit. Ezra Pound. 8. A structure becomes architectural, and not sculptural when its elements no longer have their justification in nature. Guillaume Apollinaire. 9. A tree becomes a tower regrows a tree. Neri Oxman. 10. A truly great book should be read in youth, again in maturity, and once more in old age, as a fine building should be seen by morning light, at noon, and by moonlight. Robertson Davies. 11. All architecture is shelter. All great architecture is the design of space that contains, cuddles, exalts, or stimulates the persons in that space. Philip Johnson. 12. All buildings have a psychological as well as a purely visual effect on the landscape. Elizabeth Beasley. 13. An architect can build for the future. Anthony T. Hinks. 14. Architect without pencil is like rock star without guitar. Vinaya Kanchate. 15. Architects are now on the look for materials and substances that can enhance biodiversity and rewild living systems. Neri Oxman. 16. Architects have made architecture too complex. We need to simplify it and use a language that everyone can understand. Toyo Ito. 17. Architects in the past have tended to concentrate their attention on the building as a static object. I believe dynamics are more important, the dynamics of people, their interaction with spaces and environmental condition. John Portman. 18. Architects of grandeur are often the master builders of disillusionment. Bryant H. McGill. 19. Architects today tend to depreciate themselves, to regard themselves as no more than just ordinary citizens without the power to reform the future. Kenzo Tange. 20. Architecture and urban design, both in their formal and spatial aspects, are seen as fundamentally configurational in that the way the parts are put together to form the whole is more important than any of the parts taken in isolation. Bill Hillier. 21. Architecture appears for the first time when the sunlight hits a wall. The sunlight did not know what it was before it hit a wall. Louis Kahn. 22. Architecture arouses sentiments in man. The architect's task, therefore, is to make those sentiments more precise. Adolf Loos. 23. Architecture begins where engineering ends. Walter Gropius. Famous architect quotes for inspiration. 24. Architecture can't fully represent the chaos and turmoil that are part of the human personality, but you need to put some of that turmoil into the architecture, or it isn't real. Frank Stella. 25. Architecture cannot change the economic machinations of globalization. Graham Owen. 26. Architecture excites our respect to the extent that it surpasses us. Alain de Botton. 27. Architecture is a social act and the material theater of human activity. Spiro Kostoff. 28. Architecture is a visual art, and the buildings speak for themselves. Julia Morgan. 29. Architecture is basically a container of something. I hope they will enjoy not so much the teacup, but the tea. Yoshio Taniguchi. 30. Architecture is inhabited sculpture. Constantine Brancusi. 31. Architecture is invention. Oscar Niemeyer. 32. Architecture is not an inspirational business, it's a rational procedure to do sensible and hopefully beautiful things, that's all. Harry Seidler. 33. Architecture is shaped by human emotions and desires, and then becomes a setting for further emotions and desires. It goes from the animate and inanimate and back again. For this reason, it is always incomplete, or rather is only completed by the lives in and around it. It is background. Rowan Moore. 34. Architecture is the art of how to waste space. Philip Johnson. 35. Architecture is the learned game, correct and magnificent, of forms assembled in the light. Le Corbusier. 36. Architecture is too slow in its realization to be a problem solver. Cedric Price. 37. Architecture is what nature cannot make. Architecture is something unnatural, but not something made up. Louis Kahn. 38. Architecture led to the vanishing point which led to architecture. Robin Evans. 39. Architecture must concern itself continually with the socially beneficial distortion of the environment. Cedric Price. 40. Architecture should have little to do with problem solving. Rather, it should create desirable conditions and opportunities hitherto thought impossible. Cedric Price. 41. Architecture should reflect the past and the present with the future in mind. Anthony T. Hinks. 42. Architecture should speak of its time and place, but yearn for timelessness. Frank Gehry. 43. Architecture starts when you carefully put two bricks together. There it begins. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. 44. Architecture strives to be the perfect embodiment of an idea as free as possible from all flaws or defects. It requires a process of methodical and relentless refinement. Robert Steinberg. 45. Architecture tends to consume everything else. It has become one's entire life. Arne Jacobson. Famous architecture quotes. 46. Art flouts convention. The convention became convention because it works. Stuart Brand. 47. Authentic architecture is not the incarnation of the spirit of the age but of the spirit, full stop. Leon Cryer. 48. Bridges are perhaps the most invisible form of public architecture. Bruce Jackson. 49. Building art is a synthesis of life in materialized form. We should try to bring in under the same hat not a splintered way of thinking, but all in harmony together. Alvar Aalto. 50. Buildings should serve people, not the other way around. John Portman. 51. Cities and landscapes are illustrations of our spiritual and material worth. They not only express our values, but give them a tangible reality. They determine the way in which we use or squander our energy, time, and land resources. Leon Cryer. 52. Design has killed architecture. Design is what they teach in the schools. Le Corbusier. 53. Environment and development must go hand in hand. One cannot be sacrificed for the sake of the other. Abhijit Nusker. 54. Every building is a prototype. No two are alike. Helmut John. 55. Every great architect is, necessarily, a great poet. He must be a great original interpreter of his time, his day, his age. Frank Lloyd Wright. 56. Everything inspires me. Sometimes I think I see things others don't. Norman Foster. 57. Forests were the first temples of God, and in forests men grasped their first idea of architecture. James C. Snyder. 58. Good buildings come from good people, and all problems are solved by good design. Stephen Gardner. 59. Good ideas come from everywhere. It's more important to recognize a good idea than to author it. Jean Gang. 60. Great buildings that move the spirit have always been rare. In every case, they are unique, poetic, products of the heart. Arthur Erickson. 61. I believe that the way people live can be directed a little by architecture. Tadao Ando. 62. I don't build in order to have clients. I have clients in order to build. Ayn Rand. 63. I don't divide architecture, landscape, and gardening. To me, they are one. Luis Barragan. 64. I don't want to be interesting. I want to be good. Mies van der Rohe. 65. I love building spaces, architecture, furniture, all of it, probably more than fashion. The development procedure is more tactile. It's about space and form, and it's something you can share with other people. Donna Karan. 66. I try to give people a different way of looking at their surroundings. That's art to me. Maya Lin. 67. If we can scale the structure and function relationships found in trees and crustaceans, we will be able to architect buildings, including full-scale towers, as living structures able to adapt and respond to their environment. Neri Oxman. 68. Imagine that nature is the single most important client in the architectural practice. Neri Oxman. 69. In a creative activity such as architecture, metaphor is less a threat to objective truth and more, to use another architectural metaphor, an arena of conceptual vitality, an arena being a performance area shareable with others. Simon Onwin. Best Inspirational Architecture Quotes. 70. It is hard not to see into the future, faced with today's blind architecture, 1,000 times more stupid and more revolting than that of other ages. How bored we shall be inside. Andre Breton. 71. It is new design by architects versus world revolution by political leadership. Richard Buckminster Fuller. 72. It is not the beauty of a building you should look at, it's the construction of the foundation that will stand the test of time. David Allan Coe. 73. It's about enabling the generation of materials and structures designed to interact, adapt, and respond to the natural environment. Neri Oxman. 74. Let us find harmony between concrete and nature. Without harming Earth, let us build green skyscrapers. Abhijit Nusker. 75. Let's architect a future of synergy between the natural and the built environment. Neri Oxman. 76. Literature and architecture experience the world in the same way, but arrive at different decisions, and look in different directions. Christoph Graef. 77. Melanin represents unity in the diversity of life on Earth. Neri Oxman. 78. No architecture is so haughty as that which is simple. John Ruskin. 79. Nobody is qualified to become a statesman who is entirely ignorant of the problem of wheat. Socrates. 80. Nothing requires the architect's care more than the due proportions of buildings. Vitruvius. 81. On both sides of the highway I could see the rows of little frame houses, all alike, as if there were only one architect in the city and he had a magnificent obsession. Ross MacDonald. 82. Parks, plazas, gardens, and rooftops are culture-producing places, not merely place for retreat. Sidewalks and bridges become ends in themselves, instead of just a means of getting from one place to another. Sally A. Kit Chappell. 83. Sometimes we see a house built with such magnificent architecture that here, a real architect, we shout enthusiastically. Mehmet Murat İlden. 84. Sustainability is now a big baggy sack in which people throw all kinds of old ideas, hot air, and dodgy activities in order to be able to greenwash their products and feel good. Kevin MacLeod. Famous architecture quotes for portfolio. '85. The character of the architectural forms and spaces which all people habitually encounter are powerful agencies in determining the nature of their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions, however unconscious of this they may be. Hugh Ferris. '86. The dialogue between client and architect is about as intimate as any conversation you can have, because when you're talking about building a house, you're talking about dreams. Robert A. M. Stern. 87. The door handle is the handshake of the building. Juhani Palasma. 88. The frightening thought that what you draw may become a building makes for reasoned lines. Saul Steinberg. 89. The greatest products of architecture are less the works of individuals than of society, rather the offspring of a nation's effort than the inspired flash of a man of genius. Victor Hugo. 90. The mother art is architecture. Without an architecture of our own, we have no soul of our own civilization. Frank Lloyd Wright. 91. The only direction not represented in their construction was vertical. Lee Battersby. 92. The principle of the Gothic architecture is infinity made imaginable. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. 93. The sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It is already there, I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. Michelangelo. 94. The secret of architectural excellence is to translate the proportions of a dachshund into bricks, mortar, and marble. Christopher Wren. 95. The work of art shows people new directions and thinks of the future. The house thinks of the present. Adolf Loos. 96. There is no truth in architecture, only proposition and a yearning for sense. Simon Unwin. 97. They can do without architecture who have no olives nor wines in the cellar. Henry David Thoreau. 98. Through life and programmed decomposition, shelter becomes an organism, and the organism becomes a shelter. Neri Oxman. 99. To provide meaningful architecture is not to parody history but to articulate it. Daniel Libeskind. 100. To speak in nature's language, we must prioritize bio-based structural materials, biopolymers. Biopolymers are natural polymers produced by the cells of living organisms. Neri Oxman. 101. To speak in nature's language, we must prioritize bio-based structural materials, biopolymers. Neri Oxman. 102. Unlike blowing or forming glass, resulting in smooth and continuous surfaces, the printing of glass enables high levels of control over the shape and optical properties. Neri Oxman. 103. Viewed from this perspective, architecture no longer provides a happy ending, but instead allows stories to continue. Christoph Graef. 104. We are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. R. Buckminster Fuller. 105. We might think of metaphor as a device belonging to the poetry of words, but metaphor can also be nonverbal, visual, spatial, experiential. Metaphor is essential to the poetry of architecture too. Simon Unwin. 106. We must consider the building not as an object, but as a collaborative system tightly linked to its natural environment. Neri Oxman. 107. We require from buildings two kinds of goodness. First, the doing their practical duty well, then that they are graceful and pleasing in doing it. John Ruskin.